Hello everyone! Last week I actually posted a video of my iPad and my Excel table, although it was blurred, and in it I spoke about how I use Excel to summarize my papers, and some of you said that you would like me to do a video on how I read and summarize the papers I read. So this is what this video is about. So today I'm going to take you step by step on how I read a paper, a scientific article, and how I actually summarize the papers. So usually I read my papers on an iPad. So I'm going to be using my iPad to read a paper. And for the purpose of this video, I'm actually going to record my screen so that I may share with you what exactly and how exactly does it look when I am reading a paper. So let's use Google Scholar to search for a paper. Let's say we're gonna search for social media. There's one here. The first one that comes in, I think I had opened it before. Let's go ahead and open it. It's Users of the World Unite, the Challenges and Opportunities of Social Media. So I'm gonna download this paper to read it on the app that I usually use for reading. And my cat has something to say eventually. I knew this would happen. So I'm gonna export it to previously I was using Adobe Acrobat to read my papers, but now I'm using PDF Expert, so I'm gonna say copy it to PDF Expert, and I'm just gonna dive in and read it. And as I read, I usually use the highlighter. So now that I have the Apple Pencil, I can actually highlight with the pencil. So I will be reading it, and as I go, I usually tend to highlight things that I find either the most interesting, or if it's something I want to quote, I usually highlight it in yellow. And if it's something like paper I would like to eventually look, if the authors are referencing a paper, then I would highlight that in pink. I wanted also to point out before I dive in that the reason that I'm reading a paper on social media is not because my topic is on social media. My topic is on humanitarian logistics or operations research, and I believe that those papers are very math heavy and can be very math heavy, and just to make something that anyone could identify no matter what your background or your topic is, I decided to do social media because hey, like, we all use social media, so why not? So okay, I'm gonna go and dive into this one and read for a bit. Let's do it. finish reading the paper, if you don't mind. I'm gonna take a mini break, stretch, use the bathroom, and then I'll come back to doing the summary. Okay, so I'm back after stretching for a bit and using the bathroom because I think I spent about an hour reading that paper. It usually takes me about 45 minutes to 2 hours depending on how dense the paper is, and more specifically if it has a math model. Then I spent more time digging into the math model to make sure that I really understand it and that I can really summarize it. So for summarizing it, as I mentioned on Instagram last week, I use Excel. Let me turn on the screen recording here. And okay, so I use Excel. And what do I write on Excel? I first start with the citation. So that is, how exactly should we cite the paper? I usually format the cell so that it has a wrapped text. And I tend to put it a little bit bigger though. There we go. So that's my citation. That's how I would put it on the references. And as for the title, just use copy paste. So that's the title. And then the authors would be, no idea if I'm pronouncing it right, Kaplan, and I feel sometimes that I pronounce words as if I was speaking Spanish and I am speaking in English. I'm sorry for that, I apologize. So we have the authors. Now for the journal, it was published in Science Direct. So I have the citation, the title, the authors, the journal, and now for the purpose or question. So what was the purpose of this article? After reading it, what do I think was the intention of the authors of this paper? For me, for this one in particular, I believe that the purpose was to promote the use of social media for firms and provide an overview of the advantages and social media available. Now for the methodology, it was not your traditional methodology as in this was lit review or what I am used to seeing in operations research. So this is more of summary and clarification, as well as they go over a history of what social media is. So I would say their methodology is an empirical study. The downside of Excel that it doesn't have a word editor or your correction for spelling, or not that I know of. So if you know a way of doing it, please let me know. The methodology was an empirical study, so they go over what they have seen throughout history and throughout all the various social media and talk about how we could, as firms, incorporate it into our marketing strategy or our way to improve sales. Next, let's talk about their approach. For this, I'm going to go specifically to the abstract or introduction and read again what was the purpose that they state really clearly in their paper. And this is one of the things I highlighted in. So it says that there seems to be a very limited understanding of what the term social media exactly means. This article intends to provide some clarification. On their approach, the first would be to clarify what social media is. And note that I took it into my own words. And the reason why I'm doing this is because usually when I read papers and I summarize them, I tend to do something with them, either for my lit review or for a paper I'm working in or a report. So if I already put it in my own words, when I'm writing my report, it would be easier to just copy paste from the Excel file, and I wouldn't be copy pasting from the author. That way I'm not doing plagiarism. I already took the time to put it into my own words. It also says that it's gonna go over how it differs from related concepts such as Web 2.0 and user-generated content. So it also exposes the concepts and relation between social media, user-generated content, and I also put the acronyms they use next to the word. If I go back to the paper, I tend to read first the summary I made, and then go over the paper, so that way it's easier for me to know what exactly the acronyms are. That's their approach. And finally, they will provide a set of 10 recommendations for firms to implement social media. This I know from reading it. It's not necessarily on the abstract or the introduction, but just going over it reminded me of it. Oh, and from those 10 recommendations, 5 were on the social aspect. Digging back into that. 5 points about using social media and 5 points about the social aspects. So 5 social aspects and 5 usability. And if I notice any mistakes in my spelling, I try to correct it on the fly. But note that whenever I'm copy pasting it to my final report, I will hopefully have a text editor and I can check my spelling or go over and search it so to see if the word I selected is actually correctly spelled. And as for the results, this I'm going to try to write it in my own words without diving into their conclusion. But basically, throughout this paper, and I do recommend that you read it, it's a very interesting paper. They give examples of how different companies have used social media and how the different applications or the different campaigns they did on social media helped them to increase their sales, or even if they backfire, they will tell you, but don't do this because it might backfire. And they give an example of Boeing, I believe. It was Boeing or IBM, I don't remember which one, that started a blog, but they didn't implement the blog in the same way as, you know, normal human beings implement blogs so that people can comment and share. So they limited that because they didn't want their company image to be affected by anyone leaving negative comments. But by doing that, people thought that it was a fake blog, and then it was just put out there so that they could control the image of their company, which it kind of was. And another example they put of something good, it was Burger King's campaign for Whopper, and it was you got a free Whopper for every 10 friends you removed from Facebook. And that campaign proved very successful and increased the sales for Burger King, but Facebook shut it down because I think, come on, obvious reasons. But it violated their privacy regulations of Facebook. So yeah, so basically in the results, I would say that social media is a powerful tool where businesses can increase their revenues by being genuinely involved in social. They also point out that firms must carefully choose the media in which they will be present, and that this is something that requires tons of time, and therefore they might even want to have a selected group of individuals working particularly for that. That's something that we already have in most of the companies. And if the platform does not exist, then they may create it. And they also provided examples of some platforms that didn't exist and companies created them. One of them was Fujitsu. It's a camera company, and they actually created a platform for users to share their photos and videos. I think we now have Instagram for that, but yeah, it was in 2010 that this article was published. So there were a few things that did not already take place. For example, the authors say here that MySpace and Facebook are the 2 most used social media platform, and right now last time I checked, those were not the numbers. I know that Facebook is the most used currently, but I don't think MySpace is in the top 5. You can see that there's a disparity between what's happening now and what used to be back then. The takeaway: the takeaway from this whole, I tried to do like a mini sentence on why exactly is this paper relevant or interesting, or if I usually have a report in mind or a paper in mind, or even for my own work, I would say like, for what particular reason would future Rose need to talk about this in her report? So let's say that we're just trying to convince someone about social media and why they should start using it, and this someone is an executive. So we can say that the takeaway is social media is proven to positively impact the revenue and perception of customers when used properly. I usually have another column in which I do a little note to myself. Use or quote the examples provided to convince of social media implementation. And that's it. That is the summary of the paper. The paper was available in Google Scholar, so if you wish, you can go there, read it. I must say that the idea of doing an Excel spreadsheet actually originated because I took a class on supply chain management, and in that class we had to read 5 papers per week, and each week we had to talk about those papers and be able to prove that we actually read them. And in the class I asked the professor how could she keep up with so many papers and, you know, keep track of what author said what. So she showed me the way in which she summarized it, which was really similar but on a Word document. And what I'm doing is on an Excel spreadsheet, because for one of my reports for that class, actually, I wanted to do a comparison of where each author published their results. So I had the different journals and which ones were humanitarian journals and which ones were OR journals and so on. So if you have it in an Excel spreadsheet, you can do things like that. You can automatically, with the Excel functions, do a search within your own cells. You can do a chart of each column you have, or even extrapolate information from there and do cute things and figures so that it's easier to digest for your readers. So that's it. I think this video went super long. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps. And let me know if there's any recommendations you have on how to improve this method, if you have any, or if you're going to use it in Excel, or what is your current method for reading and summarizing papers. I'm really interested in knowing that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and thank you so much for telling me you were interested in this video. And I will see you on the next video. Bye!